welcome! This is a tutorial for these cute phone cases made using tiled granny squares. I'm going to show you how to change the colours to make the design and join the squares up as we go. These are great for the summer, especially festivals, and they use up any old scraps of yarn that you might already have. So get that scrap yarn bag out and see what you can find. I'm using a size 4mm hook, which creates a design just the right size to fit a normal iPhone or Android phone. So I would recommend try and use yarn that will work with this size hook so that when it is finished, your phone case will be the same size as mine. You don't need too much of each yarn, which is the really good thing about this design, especially the accent colours, so you can use up quite small scraps if you've got any left over. To start with, you're going to use the colour that is going right in the middle of each of the tiles. So I'm going to use this kind of pale orange sunset colour, and we're going to start with a magic circle. So if you haven't done this before, I'm going to explain how to do it. So we're going to start by wrapping the yarn twice around our fingers, and you should create a cross shape like this. You can see you've got two loops around your fingers, and when you look at it from the front, you've got a cross shape with the yarn finishing in the top left. Then you want to go underneath from the back, the first loop, and grab the second loop with your hook, and you want to bring that one underneath, and that will be where we're going to start our chain from. This can feel really fiddly if you haven't done it before, so I'm going to show you again. You're going to take the yarn across the front of your fingers like this, wrap it around once more, but crossing it over instead of wrapping it straight, cross it over towards the left, then go underneath the first loop from the back and grab the second loop. Then you want to hold this because it can all fall apart if you're not careful, so hold it with your fingers, and then you can pull through from here. And so this is where we're going to start by chaining 3. So I've now got 3, and we're going to begin with double crochet. I'm going to count that as my first double crochet, and I'm going to do 2 more. So this one will be the second, and I'm going to do 1 more double crochet, and that's going to complete our first little cluster. So we've got our first cluster of 3 chains, and now we're going to chain up 2 to make the corner. So chain 1, 2, and now we want 3 more double crochet. So yarn over, through the middle, pull through 2, and then pull through 2. Yarn over, through, pull through 2, and then pull through 2 loops. Now this is the last one, and this will complete our second cluster. In between the clusters, we're going to chain 2. So I now have 2 little clusters of 3 double crochets. We're going to repeat this twice more until we have 4 clusters in total. I am sorry about the autofocus on my camera. I hope you can see okay. It's a new camera and I'm still getting used to it. This is my last double crochet now, so I've just finished the 4th cluster of 3 chains, and we're going to chain 2 to join it right where we started. So in order to do that, you can pull the little tail, and that will shrink the size of your magic ring. Don't pull it too tightly just yet, because we want to make sure that we've got the right number of stitches and join everything up. So we're going to slide through the very first chain that we made and just pull through a slip stitch there to join that all together. Then from here we're going to chain 1 and cut the yarn, because this is all we need for that first colour. So just chain up 1 and pull through there, and then we're done with this. So we want to make sure that the middle circle is nice and tight, so you can pull quite hard on that tail. Obviously you don't want to snap it, but it should sort of slide and click a little bit once it's completely tight. So pull it kind of as hard as you can without breaking it, and it will tighten up that central magic ring, and we have like a nice seamless finish in the center. Now we're going to take our second colour. I'm using white, but you can use any colour that you like, and we're going to create a slip knot on here. Then you want to grab your little piece and look for the little chain spaces in between the clusters and put your hook through one of those chain spaces and then slide on the slip knot. Then we're going to pull that through and chain up 3. Now we're going to count that as our first double crochet, and we want to make a cluster of 3. So this is the second and this is the third double crochet. Then just like before, we're going to do 2 chains and another cluster of 3 double crochet. Once you have finished that second cluster, don't chain anything. We're going to move straight on to the next corner space and straight into the next cluster. So yarn over and just move on with your next double crochet, and we're going to put 3 into the next corner space. If I'm moving too quickly, please do pause the video and play it at your own pace. Okay, we're now in the next corner, so we're going to put 2 chains here. And now we move on with our next cluster of 3 double crochets, and we're working along the next side of the square. So essentially when we're going around the corner, we're putting the 2 chains. When we're going just across the straight side of the square, we don't chain anything. So as you can see here, I've turned the corner, and now we're going to move on to the next chain space without putting any chains in between the clusters. And now we're going to chain 2 because we are at the corner again. Now another cluster of double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing in this last chain space here. So 3 double crochets, then we're going to chain 2 and 3 more double crochets to complete this round. Last double crochet, and I am at the beginning where I started. So you're going to slide your hook through the very first chain 3 stitch that we did and pull through a slip stitch to complete the round. You can see that my magic circle wasn't pulled quite tightly enough and it's come open again, so I'm just going to yank on that a little bit, try and get that closed. So now we're going to start round 3, and this is where we're going to introduce our next colour. But before we do that, we're just going to do 1 cluster using the same yarn that we have been using for the previous round. So picking that up, we're going to chain 3. And now we're working back on ourselves slightly into this space here, just below where we made the chain 3. So put your hook through there, and that's where we're going to do our next 2 double crochets to make this cluster. But stop before you do the last stitch. When you're about to pull through your last 2 loops, hold fire, and we're going to attach our new yarn here, and this is how you're going to make a seamless colour transition. So grab your yarn and make a slip knot. Put that on before you pull through your very last 2 loops and pull through in the new colour. This can feel a little bit fiddly with the tension because you've now got 2 yarns attached, so you'll need to pull on the first one a little bit just to close that up. Move the tail out the way, and we're now working with the second yarn, the new colour, but we're going to carry the original one with us because we still want to use it. So we're moving into this corner chain space, but keep the first colour with us, and when you're going through the chain space, make sure you're going around that yarn as well. So we're putting 3 double crochets into the corner in the new colour and going around the previous yarn as well, the white yarn. Then chain up 2 in the corner, and we're going to put another cluster of 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, and we're going to just stop right before you pull through the last 2 loops, and we're going to pick up that yarn that we've just carried. So drop the coloured yarn and pick up the first one and use that to pull through for the very final stitch. You'll need to joggle your tension a little bit to make sure that that's working okay. And we're going to pick up the second yarn and we're going to put our next cluster in that colour without chaining anything in between. So a cluster of 3 in here. Stop before you're pulling through the last 2 loops on the final double crochet and pick up the blue yarn, or whichever colour it is that you've chosen, to swap back again. You will find that your yarn will get twisted at the back, which can be a bit of a pain, so stop as often as you need to, and you'll just simply need to swap the balls over like this. I mean, go for as long as you can without having to untangle them, but every now and then you might need to stop and swap the balls over. And now just remember to keep carrying the yarn that you're not using with you as you move forward. So now we're putting a cluster of 3 in the corner here and chain 2 to turn the corner. Now we want another cluster of 3 in this contrast blue yarn. And then just before we finish the last stitch, we're going to change back to white again. So we should hopefully have that in the background here. Drop the blue and pick up the white one just to finish off that very last stitch. And then we're going to put a cluster of 3 in the middle here in the white. Now we're switching back to blue again, and we're going to do 2 clusters in the corner on the next side. I am just finishing the first cluster in the corner, and I don't know if you can see on the back here this white loop. So I'm just going to pull on the white yarn just to pull that through. You got to keep an eye on the tension for both yarns, even the one that you're not using, just to make sure you don't have extra at the back. Now I'm chaining 2, and I am doing the next cluster to finish off the corner in the blue yarn. Now we're switching over, picking up the white yarn just to finish off that very final stitch before we move on to the next one. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you would like to see on my channel, and give me a follow if you're enjoying the tutorial. Okay, moving on, we are doing a cluster of 3 in the white yarn here. Pick up the next colour, and we just have 2 clusters left to finish off this round. So we're going to move straight on and do 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. Then when we reach the final corner, chain 2 and finish with 3 double crochets. When you reach the end of this round, you can finish off your very last stitch in the same colour. We don't need to change back just yet. So finish off your last stitch, and now we're going to slip stitch through into the place where we started just to join the round together. But we do need to bring the other yarn with us. So when you've got your hook through, lay the yarn over the top before you slip stitch, and that's going to ensure that the yarn gets carried up to the next round with us. So still using the same colour, we're going to chain up 3. And working back on ourselves into that space just below the chain 3, we're going to put 2 double crochets into that chain space. Now we're moving on into the next chain space, and just make sure that you're carrying the yarn at the back with you as you move along. And we're going to do 3 double crochet in the next chain space. Now we're changing colour, so finish off your very last stitch in the new colour. Keep an eye on carrying that one at the back and just adjust the tension as you need to. And we're going to put a cluster of 3 in the corner here. Now chain 2 and a cluster of 3 doubles. Now we're picking up the blue yarn to finish off that very last double crochet, the very last stitch, and we're going to do the next 2 clusters in the blue in the next 2 chain spaces without chaining anything in between them. Okay, I've now reached the corner, so I'm going to finish off by doing the very last stitch in the white yarn, and we're going to do the next 2 clusters to form the corner in the white, but we're chaining 2 in between them as we go around the corner. So here's a cluster of 3 double crochet, now chain 2, and now 3 more doubles, and we're changing back to blue on the very last stitch of the 3rd double crochet. Okay, pause, untangle, untangle. Okay, we've already picked up our next colour, so we're just going to go ahead and do 2 more clusters of 3 double crochet across this side. Now we're going to swap colours just to finish off the very last stitch, and we're going to do the 2 corner clusters in the white. So this is the end of my first cluster. Now chain 2 to turn around the corner, and another cluster of 3 doubles. We're going to swap colours on the very last stitch, pick up the new yarn and drop the one that you were just using. And we're going to do our next 2 clusters in the new yarn without chaining anything in between them. Swap colours to do the next 2 clusters in the corner. Okay, we're now reaching the end of this final round, so we're going to do our cluster of 3 here, then we're going to chain 2 in the corner, so chain 1, 2, and now our last 3 double crochets to finish off this round. So that's 2 and 3. And now you've finished our first square, we're going to go through and just slip stitch and chain 1 to finish off the round. Now you can cut both of your yarns and just pull through the tail, and that is your first square complete. And the good news is the rest of them are all the same, so if you've got this far, you've pretty much nailed it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create another square exactly the same as this one, but this is a join as you go project, so we're going to join on the very last edge of the next square. So go ahead and follow through the steps to make another square exactly the same as this one, but leave your very last side of the square, so this row here, stop when you get to that point, and I'm going to show you what we do from there. Okay, so this is what it will look like when you've got your next square and you stop just before you do your very last row. Obviously there's a little gap here because we didn't start right in the corner, so leave it when it looks exactly like this, and we're going to join the squares together now. So I've done my first cluster in the corner and I'm just about to chain 2 to make the corner space. So we're going to chain 1, and on the next one we're going to chain through the first square. So put your hook through the gap in the corner and chain 1, joining the squares together like this. Now we're going to carry on working exactly as we would have done otherwise. So we're going to put 3 double crochets in the corner space, and we're going to change over to the blue yarn just before we finish the very last stitch. So drop the white yarn and pull through the very last one in blue. And now here we want to add another little joining stitch. So just after that white cluster, in between the white and the blue, put the hook through and just pull through a slip stitch. Now move on to the next chain space, and we're going to do our next cluster of 3 in the blue yarn here. Remember to keep traveling the other color with you at the back. After that cluster, we're going to do another little slip stitch in the next gap here and just match them up so that you are joining them together so that they line up perfectly. Swap your yarn just before you're finishing the very last stitch, and we're going to add another little slip stitch just to join into the next space on the other side. You want to insert your hook. Now there isn't actually a chain space there, but there is a gap in between the clusters. That's where you want to put your hook, and that's where you're going to pull through your slip stitch. At this point, you don't need to travel the blue yarn with you anymore because we've finished using it. So you can just drop it at the back. Now we've got our first corner cluster here. We're going to chain one, and then we're going to put the hook through the little corner chain space on the other side to pull through our second chain. And now we just have to finish with our very last cluster of 3 doubles. Pull through a slip stitch and chain 1 to finish. So you can see we've joined up the tiles as we go, which means you don't have to sew them, and there is no gap in between where the colours all match up together, which makes it look really seamless. I love doing join as you go projects like this, and you also don't need to block the squares. So we just need to do 2 more to make the back of our phone case, but on the back we are going to be joining on more sides. So you're going to be joining on 3 sides. I'll show you what I mean. So go ahead and do your next square with the first 3 rounds, and you can do the very first line of the 4th round and then stop there. So this is where I want you to stop with the next square. So we have just started the 4th round, but I've left 3 sides completely open because we're going to join along all of these sides. Just for reference, this is where the square is going to sit, so we're going to join along here, here and here. So we're going to chain 1 to start the corner chain space, and to do the second one we want to join, but instead of joining straight across, which would be here, we're actually going to go across on the diagonal. When you're joining squares as you go, if you have the opportunity to join across on a diagonal, then do that, because it's going to just make sure that you don't have any gaps in the middle of where you've joined 4 squares together. So now we're going to do our next cluster of 3 double crochets. Change the yarn, and we're going to do a slip stitch to join across to the other side. We're going to join just through here. And now our next cluster of 3 is going to go in the gap here. Once you finish that group, we're going to add another little slip stitch in the chain space there, and do our next group of 3 doubles. Swap over the colours on the last stitch. And now we're going to do another little slip stitch to join, just in the gap here. And now we're going to start making the corner. Remember to keep your yarn with you at the back. So we're going to put 3 double crochets in here. Now chain 1, and the next chain 1 we're going to join again. Now you can put your next group of 3 double crochets. change colour on the last stitch, and now here is where it gets interesting because we want to join the next side as well. So this piece is going to fold over to make the back of the phone case, and so we actually want to join along this bottom edge too. So using the blue yarn, we want to go through and add a little slip stitch just here before we work our next group of 3 double crochets. Once you've finished all 3 doubles, then we're going to add another little slip stitch just in here. And now we're going to do the next cluster. Switch over your yarn when you get to the corner. And don't forget, we need another little slip stitch just here to join up to the other side. Now you can carry on with 3 double crochets to make the corner. And chain 1 and then join into the other corner on the next chain, and this is what it's going to look like. You can see we've now joined up 2 sides and we need to just join across 1 more of them. So we're going to finish off the corner with 3 doubles in the white before changing colour. Now swap your yarn and we're going to join over into this chain space here on the other side. Now 3 double crochets. And slip stitch to join into this chain space. Now 3 more doubles. Slip stitch onto the other side, and we're now done with the blue yarn, so you don't need to carry it with you anymore. And we're going to do the last corner to finish off this round, so 3 double crochets. Now chain 1. And now join across again on the diagonal if you can, so that's this square up here, to link that corner together. Now you can finish off this round with 3 more double crochets, and then we're going to join right where we started to finish off this square. So pull through a slip stitch and chain 1, then you can cut off your yarn and you have finished square number 3. Okay, so once you're finished, this is what it's going to look like. You can see we've made the bottom part, which is where the phone is going to sit. We've joined it on all 3 sides. We're going to do exactly the same thing again with the next square. So you're going to go ahead and join 3 sides and we're going to leave the top open. So you're joining along here at the back, and joining along here, and then leave the very top open, because obviously we want to be able to put something inside it. So I'm just nearing the very end of attaching my fourth and final square, and I've obviously left the top side open, and I'm just at the end of joining the third side and the final corner. So I've just changed the yarn colour, and I'm going to add another slip stitch in here before I move on to do the 2 clusters to finish off the corner. This is the end of my first cluster. I'm going to chain 1, put the yarn through and slip stitch to join the other side, and now finish off with a final cluster of 3 double crochets. And now we're just going to slip stitch into the very first part where we started and chain 1. Go ahead and cut your yarn. We're now pretty much done. We've completed our little phone pouch. Go ahead and check if your phone fits inside. Hopefully it should. And I'm just going to add a strap and a little frill on the edging. If I show you the one that I have already made, this is what it looks like. So I added the strap in this dark blue on this one, and the frill is in the same colour to match. On this one, I think I'm going to do orange. So go ahead and get your yarn, whichever one you would like. You could do any of the 3 colours that we've used, or a different one entirely if you like. That would also work. I'm going to show you how to make this easy chain. So what you might have done before is chain up a really long chain and slip stitch all the way back down, but I actually prefer this way. It's much easier. You just have to make sure that you leave a really long tail. So I'm going to pull through 10 arm lengths of yarn to make sure that I've got a really long tail and I'm not going to run out on the other side. Then you're going to go make a slip knot in the yarn, and we're going to put the hook through at the side where we joined the 2 squares together. So put your hook through in the gap in between the 2 squares and put on your slip knot. Now I'm going to show you how to make this chain. So go ahead and pull that through, and now we're going to take the length of yarn that's on the left and lay it over the hook to create a little wrap, and then we're going to pull through both of those loops to chain 1, and then wrap it over again and chain 1, and just keep going. So we're taking 1 length of yarn and just wrapping it over the hook to create a loop, and then pull through both of those loops. And this is really nice because you can just keep going until you feel like the strap is the right length, and it creates a really nice thickness strap. So go ahead and make as many chains as you like until you feel like the case can go over your shoulder or across your body, and I will meet you at the other end once I have a long chain. Okay, so now you want to make sure that your chain isn't twisted so that we can join it on the other side. So lay it down. You want to go along from the start and just pass it through with your fingers to make sure that it's laying flat, and turn it around so that it is facing one way and you don't have any twists in there. Then carefully match that up to the other side, and we're going to put our hook through and attach it on the other side. From here, I'm going to go straight into making the scalloped edge. So I've cut off the long tail because we don't need that section anymore, but keep the section that's attached to the ball of yarn. And we're going to pull through one slip stitch to fasten that chain securely. And we're now going to go ahead and make a scallop. So I'm fitting 3 little scalloped edges along the top here. And so to make a scalloped edge, you're going to skip a stitch, and then in the next stitch, you're going to put your yarn over and you're going to put 5 double crochets in that stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we would usually skip the next stitch and slip stitch into the next one, and then skip one, and then do the same again. Because we need this to fit in the middle, you might need to skip more than one stitch. So we're going to just go and place this where we think the center of the design is, and that's quite easy to see because of the color pattern. So just make sure that you're placing this next scallop right in the middle of the design, and go ahead and do 5 double crochets in there. And then again, we would normally skip one, but just try and space these out evenly as possible. So skip 1 or 2 if you need to skip 2, and then pull through a slip stitch, and then we've got one more set of 5 to do. So just try and fit these in as best as you can, and if you need to skip more than one stitch, that's okay. So we're now just going to go in and finish off that last one by pulling through a slip stitch. We're now right next to where we started the strap, so that's great. So we're just going to go straight around that strap as if it wasn't there. So skip the next stitch and then put 5 double crochets into the next space. Then you're going to skip the next one, and then you're going to put a slip stitch, and then we're aiming for the middle of the design with the next scallop. So it should be skip 1, but if you need to skip 2, that's fine. And we're going to place the next set of 5 double crochets right in the middle. Now skip 1 and do a slip stitch to finish off that scallop, and now we're going to finish off with one more set of 5 double crochets and just place this in the middle of the space that you have remaining. And we're now at the end, so finish off the very last scallop with a slip stitch and chain 1, and then you can cut your yarn, pull that through, and we're finished. So all that's left is just to sew in our ends, which is everyone's least favourite part, but I'm going to show you how I do it, and hopefully that might help you. So turn your little phone case inside out, and we have a nice mess of ends on the inside. So pull through the corners, make sure you've got all of the tails on this side, and this is how I like to sew them in. So you can wrap the yarn around a darning needle to make a flat edge and then thread it through. And then we're just going to pick up the back of some of these stitches. Sorry, my camera's not focusing. There we go. And we're going to just pull through and then go back on yourself again through the stitches maybe in the row below, so that you don't pull it completely out. And just make sure that you're not disturbing the stitches at the front. So we just want to hide that tail, but only through the back of the stitches. We don't want to disturb any of the work that's going on at the front. We are all finished. This is what they look like. I think they're so cute, really useful if you're going out to a barbecue or just to the park and you don't want to take a bag. You can fit your phone in there, you can fit sunglasses, probably even a lipstick as well. You could also make something bigger, so if you wanted to just make more squares and keep joining them, you could make a bigger bag or a makeup pouch, and I think that would be so cute. Send me your pictures over on Instagram. I am at IA Knitwear. I love seeing what you've made. And thank you so much for watching.